Hello everyone, my name is Olivia and welcome to another Books and Brews, a series on my channel where I recommend 5 books that I recently read while I drink something very cozy and warm. Today I have some chamomile tea. This is actually my second time filming this video. I filmed it yesterday and just wasn't a fan of it. I just thought I was just so frazzled, so I decided to film it all over again. Let's get into it. So the first book that I want to talk about is the second book that I read in 2023, and it is a book that I couldn't stop thinking about once I finished it, and it is perfect for fans of Alicent Hightower from House of the Dragon and Would've, Could've, Should've by Taylor Swift. And it is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. The Marriage Portrait is another historical fiction from Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote Hamnet, which is one of my favorite books of all time. This is set during the 1500s in Florence, and we follow a girl named Lucrezia. She is growing up in a palace, she is a daughter of a duke, and she is somewhat of an outlier in her family. All her family members know their duties in the palace, and she kind of stands out from that. And when she turns 15, she is married off to a man named Alfonso. This is a marriage of convenience between both families in order to bind them together, and Lucrezia is thrust into this world of being a wife, of being a lady, and she is also dealing with the fact that her girlhood was ripped away from her. I'm really enjoying this trend that Maggie O'Farrell is doing, where she takes a woman from history, like Shakespeare's wife in Hamnet, and Lucrezia from history, and she fictionalizes their lives, examines them a little bit closer, and adds a little bit of context, even if it is fictional, to their lives, because these are two women in history that we don't know a lot about. They both had a very brief moment in the textbooks of history, but we don't actually know how their lives unfolded. Maggie O'Farrell examines Lucrezia's life as a new wife, as a teenager, and how her husband expects so much from her and is commissioning a marriage portrait for her. And throughout that whole entire time that she is posing for the marriage portrait, a lot of things are unfolding in her family, in her household, in her relationship with Alfonso, and it was just such a fantastic read. It was a bit difficult to get into at the beginning, and the middle does drag on, but I do think the overall story, the overall message that it's trying to send, and the way that it examines girlhood and teenagehood and how that can be ripped away so easily from these girls is fascinating. So while I didn't enjoy this as much as Hamnet, it still really left an impression on me. It reminded me so much of Alicent Hightower in the House of the Dragon, and how she had to be married off at such a young age to an older man, and she had to perform the duties that a wife does. And this also reminds me a lot of Would've, Could've, Should've when Taylor Swift sings, "Give me back my girlhood, it was mine first." This was a fantastic read. It's definitely not as good as Hamnet, but I do think it is worth your time. Right after reading The Marriage Portrait, I was listening to Black Cake on audiobook and fell completely in love with it, and this is my first 5-star read of 2023. Black Cake follows 2 siblings, Byron and Benny, and they have recently lost their mother, Eleanor, and she gives them 2 things after her death: a black cake that is passed down for generations, and also a voice recording. Through this voice recording, Benny and Byron listen to their mother recount her life and the different people who touched her along the way, and the different experiences that she had that her children didn't necessarily know about. So not only are we following Byron and Benny as they are grieving the loss of their mother, but we're also learning more about the mother along the way. And I think this is one of the most well thought out literary fictions that I have ever read, because it introduces you to an array of characters in the way that you know so many people throughout your life, and the author weaves together all these characters and shows you how each of them had a direct impact on Eleanor's life, and how all these different events that happened led up to Eleanor becoming a mother to Byron and Benny. This is just such a well thought out, beautiful story exploring motherhood, grief, racism, the immigrant experience, and just the secrets that people hide throughout their life that not everyone necessarily knows about until they're gone. It was such a beautiful read that was vulnerable and lyrical and just so well thought out, and the way that we were introduced to so many characters, but it didn't feel confusing. It felt so purposeful and kind of felt like a TV show where you were introduced to, let's say, 10 or 12 different characters, and at first you're wondering what their stories are going to be like, and then you realize that they're all woven together, and that's what this story did. Fantastic read. Also a really good audiobook. I found it to be really engaging and interesting, and it was just a really good read. It was just so beautiful, all around, just a beautiful story. The next book that I have to talk about, I actually have a reading vlog for, which I will link down below, but it became one of my favorite reads of all time, and it is a 5 out of 5 star read as well, and it's making me think that I'm on my best reading year yet. I have gone through a lot of reading years where I didn't read things that I enjoyed. I picked up a lot of books that I thought I would enjoy, but they all turned out to be really disappointing. But looking at 2023 so far in terms of my reading, I've been loving so many books that I've picked up, and this one is no different, and it is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is somewhat of a classic if you are looking for post-apocalyptic books to read, and I picked this up because I wanted to read a couple of books that reminded me of Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us. And this follows a father and a son. They are living in a post-apocalyptic environment, and you don't necessarily know why the apocalypse started, but you do know that this father and his son are traveling along the road, and they are trying to get to the south in hopes of living to see another year, because the climate that they're currently in is too cold and too desolate for them to survive. So this is a very simple story. It's a simple premise, and it's told through vignettes, and it has a very unique writing style in the way that it's kind of stream of consciousness from the father's perspective, as he has this unwavering duty to protect his son against all odds, even though he doesn't necessarily want to live to see another day, because what's the point of it all? There's a quote that I put in my Goodreads review from the book that says, "Nobody wants to be here and nobody wants to leave." And I think that's one of the most interesting things that you can examine in a post-apocalyptic story. The fact that everyone is so devoid of hope, and they're just so tired and exhausted, and they're surviving another day. But why? Why are they surviving another day? Nothing is going to go back to normal. Their lives are forever altered, and they're living on this earth that is burnt to a crisp. There's barely any food, and everyone who's still alive is either completely devoid of humanity, or they're just someone you cannot truly trust. So Cormac McCarthy examines this through the lens of a father and a son. This father wants to help his son survive because he is the reason why this father is alive. And the son has this deep hope within his soul that things will get better, that there are good people out there. And it's very different from his father, because his father witnessed the end of the world, quote unquote, and he witnessed the normalcy that we had and how we all lost it. But his son was born into this world, so this is his normal, and he has this hope that his father doesn't have anymore. So his father is living and surviving and trying his best for his son, which reminds me a lot of Joel and Ellie. Joel doesn't necessarily have a reason to live until he meets Ellie, until he has a purpose again, and that purpose is protecting his kid and trying to help her see another day. It is such a simplistic story with a very accessible writing style that I initially thought that I wouldn't get into, but once I got like 50 pages into the story, I couldn't put it down because I just wanted to know if the boy and the father were going to be okay. This story will make you sob. It will make you think about humanity and religion and fatherhood and family and survival, and it is such a wonderful classic story that I think deserves all the hype. It definitely is perfect for fans of The Last of Us, and it really left an impression on me. If you want to see me sob about this book, it is in my reading vlog. I am really proud of that reading vlog. I had a fun time filming it, and I want more people to see it, so I will link it down below, but I cannot recommend this enough. I definitely do want to go back to it a couple of years down the line to annotate it, because I initially read it through my library, so I wasn't able to annotate, but now that I have my own copy, I definitely do want to go back to it, annotate, and just really break it down, because this is such a beautiful story that has so much depth to it when you really think about it, and it just really blew me away. Was fantastic. Cannot recommend this enough if you're looking for something similar to The Last of Us. Another fantastic story that I read was the Get Out screenplay by Jordan Peele. I have been trying to read one play a month throughout 2023, and I think I read this in February, and I loved it. Jordan Peele is one of my favorite directors of all time, and being able to pick up his screenplay that he annotated and added a lot of depth to, and also see the different shots from the movie, and also read some deleted scenes, was fantastic. It added so much depth to the story and made me appreciate Jordan as an artist because his attention to detail, his symbolism, and the way that he makes his decisions as an artist was fascinating to read. The screenplay also has an introduction that discusses the history of Black horror and how Jordan was inspired by that to create Get Out. And it was just a fantastic screenplay. I definitely do want to rewatch it again to notice the little details that he added a lot of context to in this screenplay. And I want him to share his reasonings behind certain decisions in Nope and Us, and I hope he does it in the future. But if you're a fan of Jordan Peele, if you want to learn a little bit more about his artistry, I would highly recommend the Get Out screenplay because it is absolutely worth your time. It is just such a beautiful work of art, and I just love it even more now because I've learned so much about it. We have one more book, guys, and this one is not a 5 out of 5 star read, but I still wanted to talk about it anyway. And that book is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. This is a book that was one of my most anticipated reads of 2023 that I was just so excited to pick up because so many people have ranted and raved about how much they loved it. So we follow our main character, Faye, who recently lost her husband, and she is dipping her toes back into the dating scene a couple years later, and she meets a man named Nasir. Nasir invites her on vacation to his island, and that's when she meets Nasir's father, who is a really famous chef, and his name is Alim. And she begins to realize that she has feelings for Nasir's father. And what prevented me from giving this a 5 out of 5 stars is the fact that I thought that this would explore grief a little bit more because it's pitched as a woman who lost her husband and she is trying to move on. Therefore, I thought that this would center more about her grief and the fact that she has these feelings for these two men. And she is also coming to terms with the fact that she can also grieve but also fall in love again. But rather than that, we are watching Faye as she is making these very rash decisions, and she is making it in a way that doesn't necessarily inform the reader. She's making these decisions without really going through the thought process of it, so I felt very disconnected from the protagonist. I felt like I didn't necessarily know her. I didn't know her past and her relationship with her husband. Even though he had such a large presence in the story, we never actually learned anything about him besides the fact that he died a certain way. So while this story did engross me and I couldn't put it down, and I thought the writing was beautiful and lyrical and a very interesting story because it really showcases someone who doesn't have it all together, I still wish it explored grief because I felt like that was such a large presence in this story, yet it was never actually explored. It was definitely brought up between Faye and Alim, who also lost his wife, and that was their general connection together. I didn't feel like I knew her husband or I knew her actual personality. I just felt very disconnected from her, and that's totally okay because a protagonist doesn't have to necessarily lay out all their cards to you as a reader, but I just felt disconnected from the story overall, and I wish I was more connected to the protagonist, her past, her decisions, and it was still a fantastic read and definitely worth your time if you're interested in it, but it just kind of went off in a direction that I didn't expect it to go in, and it wasn't necessarily what I wanted it to be, which is also personal preference because we all have different expectations for stories, and sometimes when it doesn't go in the direction that you want it to, you're a little bit disappointed or you're a little bit surprised. This one I was a little bit disappointed, but it doesn't make it a terrible book. I'm just very neutral about it. So those are 5 reads that I have recently read at the beginning of 2023 that really left an impression on me. Let me know if you have read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, and if you have any other video ideas that you would like me to do in the future. Do you want me to do a specific reading video, a specific movie video? I would love to hear your thoughts down below. If you want to follow me anywhere else on social media to see what I'm currently reading or to see extra content that you won't see here, follow me over on Instagram and TikTok because I post there pretty often. And if you have made it this far in the video, leave a red heart emoji to match my turtleneck. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I will see you very soon. Bye!